All right, welcome, folks.
Jai
We,
Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Jai Baba.
we are celebrating the life of a dear friend of many, many folks here today, Dr. Tom Decker. Um, and to start off with, I'll uh, I'll play a song. Well, Pam will play a song, and I'll play a little video of of, of Tom's early times in India. So
Cool.
you want to start? Yes, if you'll start it, that'd be great.
Baba.
Can you see that?
So many loved ones leaving the scene. What could it all mean, beloved Baba?
Pam, you're muted.
Was there a homecoming of which we weren't advised? Was someone lost, their mother or a brother, or maybe a dad, a sister, or a significant other? Why did they leave us so soon? Why did they leave us so soon? Was there an early harvest before the harvest moon? Well, Baba, you are the doer, and you are the deed, and you are the one for whom the deed is done. You play every part, you play every part, but what is the part that can mend a broken heart? So many loved ones leaving the scene. What could it all mean, beloved Baba? You play every part, you play every part, but what is the part that can mend a broken heart?
Very good. Hey. Hey, you guys.
Jai Baba.
I don't know where we're testing.
Now we're going to see a video clip of Tom telling his story. So let me cue that up here. Mhm. Sorry, I'll get there. I know. Okay. All right, here we are. There. There.
If you hear someone.
I was raised in a Catholic family. I went to Catholic grade school and Catholic high school and Jesuit college. And towards the end of my college career, which would have been 1964, there was a big change going on in the church at the time. It was called the ecumenical movement. It was an attempt to bring a greater sense of unity to Christianity in general, and the Pope was opening up to this idea. And I think he wrote an encyclical, an ecumenical encyclical, and so there was that sense of things breaking down. The old, rigidity was breaking down, and that appealed to me. I liked it, and so I started reading liberal Catholic journals and some liberal Catholic thought, and there were some theologians around at that time, Hans Kung and others, who were getting a lot of heat from Rome, because they were quite liberal in their thinking. Teilhard de Chardin was another one who really opened things up. So that was just as I graduated from college and entered medical school. And it's funny, those first 2 years in medical school were they were difficult, but I was preoccupied with other things. It was 64 to 66, 67. There was a lot going on in America. There were the bus rides into the South. The civil rights movement was really coming to a head. And this flower power that you mentioned last night was starting to become something really significant. And there was a sense of awakening to getting away from some of the rigidity of the 50s and the 40s. And so that was exciting, and it sort of, I'll say that it took my mind off my studies, but it was really probably, just laziness on my part. But also, I must have been searching or looking. I carried a Bible around with me periodically. I started reading it. Catholics don't read the Bible much. In Protestant religions they do. But anyway, I started reading the Bible, thinking I might find something there that, and it was okay. But but I don't know. Maybe I felt that it was the truth. The words didn't come together in my heart the way that I wasn't fully excited by it. And so I continued. I had difficulty in my second year. I had to repeat my second year in medical school. And as a consequence of that, I went to the University of Michigan. This, by the way, medical school was in Albany, New York, and I grew up in New York State. And this summer in Michigan, it was at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And it was originally to take some makeup courses, but because I had to repeat the year anyway, I didn't take any makeup courses. And I decided to explore more on my own. So I was, the university had a policy where you could sit in on classes if you wanted to. You didn't have to register or pay if you weren't going to take a test or take it for credit, so I could do that, and that was interesting. And they had a department of religious studies there, and it had its own library. And I don't know, I was drawn to go there, and it was there that I found a couple of books that were what I needed to hear. One was on situation ethics, and the other one was entitled Honest to God. They were both written by Protestant theologians, I think. And it just opened up my sense of it expanded the sentiment and the notions of God that I'd learned of in Christianity, and it broke down a lot of the barriers of the do's and don'ts in terms of sin and all of that. And it was just kind of like clean the slate. It was just the most wonderful feeling. So I came back to medical school, and I just felt revitalized in a sense, and finished out the 4 years. Well, this would have been 5 years with the repeat. And then I decided that I'd get a smattering of psychiatry. And when you do your internship year, you can rotate through different specialties or subspecialties. If you're interested in pediatrics, you can have like a 6-month rotation in pediatrics and then do, you know, internal medicine and surgery and a few other things. Well, I picked what they call a rotating psychiatric internship. So I had 3 to 6 months of psychiatry. And the internship year starts on July 1st, all throughout the country. And it's for the period of 1 year. And so I started in psychiatry. And so it had been July of '69. And probably maybe 4 weeks into it, maybe less, a new person joined the staff. He was a psychologist. His name was Ken Lux. And I didn't even know he was there until, you know, one day I was just doing a little charting, and then this face peers over my shoulder and kind of looks at me and says, "Hi, I'm Ken. I'd like to get to know you. Let's sit down and talk sometime." So I said, "Sure." And this was a locked psychiatric ward. There were really seriously sick people, bad schizophrenia. And we had offices there. So one night, probably in August, I was alone in the office and just kind of finishing up, and Ken walks in. And he says, "Let's just talk." And I said, "Great." And I was excited about a lot of things that was happening then. There was the encounter group movement in psychology was going on. There were a lot of new names in psychology. Physics was exploding with new theories that were just, you know, breaking down barriers. It was a tremendous time of, you know, ferment and openness. And the music was fantastic. I mean, all these groups coming out of San Francisco and Britain. It was a wonderful time. And Ken said, "Well, you know, we talked a little bit about some of this new psychology, this humanistic psychology." And then he said, "Did you ever hear the Moody Blues?" And I said, "Yeah, I've heard of them. I haven't listened to them." He said, "Oh, great, wonderful. Nights in White Satin, did you ever hear that record?" I said, No, I never heard of it." So anyway, turns out we had, you know, a lot that we were mutually interested in. So he says, "Well, let's go get something to eat." So this would be August of '69, and there was a famous Jewish delicatessen in Albany called Joe's, a real Jewish delicatessen. And everybody from the hospital went there, the interns, the residents, the nursing staff. I mean, it was just one of those very special places. Never been in anyone as good since. So we sat down, small little tables, and we had ordered, and I was having my sandwich, and Ken, I mean, the table was only about that wide, you know, and Ken wore glasses, and he had bright blue eyes, and he just kind of went, you know, I'm eating my sandwich, and he says, "Have you ever heard of the word avatar?" And I said, "No, I've never heard of that." And he said, "It means descent of God into human form. Mayor Baba says he is the avatar of this age, and that God comes not once, but periodically through history. There's Zoroaster, Ram, Krishna, Buddha, Christ, and now is Mayor Baba, Muhammad too." And I just sat there and I'm thinking, yeah. That's how it works, isn't it? You know, I mean, this is what's quietly going through my head. That's how
Baba has his own ways to entrap you.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well, I've been through a lot of struggle up to that
I
point,
know,
you know.
that's right. But anyway, I mean, it is, Baba works mysterious ways, but he knew the master is ready and he got the people. But one thing I had to tell you, I am also entrapped because he was my Baba's doctor at Pilgrim Center.
Here's the entrapment right here. These two.
I get that. I mean,
So
it's so
anyway,
mysterious. No
Yeah.
escape if our karma is like that. All roads will be there. And
all I can say is I'm eternally grateful.
one thing I found with some of the Baba lovers whom I met, my first contact with Baba lovers in the US was in '84 when my daughter was working at Naperville as the chief planner for the city of Naperville near Chicago. We came to know there is a Baba center in Chicago and we made a plea. Could we attend Baba meetings? That is, we are otherwise in the desert, we don't.
Whoops. I'll share. Okay, I think this is this is where we yeah, we got most of Tom's story. Is that right, Pam?
Yeah, you did. You're perfect. Yeah.
Very good. Interesting. Totally interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now, next on the agenda is we have just a slideshow of photos of Tom's life that I'm hoping that these two, Pam and Charlie, will narrate. I can I paste it so that I think you can you keep time with the photos, and if not, I'll just pause it and you can elaborate on a particular
Okay.
scale. Okay.
Thanks, Betty.
Anybody that wants to chime in, fine.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I
Okay.
think I saw John Wilshons
Yeah.
in the gallery,
Hi,
and
John.
he wanted to add the first Baba meetings in Tampa. Find a spot and feel welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, let's just watch photos, and if a moment arises before I get to it, just call on me.
Okay.
Check
Baba.
out Charlie. I had one only thing I remember about Tom is that somehow I ended up on the telephone with him. And we talked about cars. He said, you can't buy an American car if you just get gypped. You have to buy Japanese. We discussed that for a moment.
If you'd like, I could tell the story of the beginning of the Baba Group in Tampa, if you'd like now.
Please do.
Time for that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, plenty.
Well, it was back in 1972. Summer of 72, I spent a lot of time at the Baba Center in Myrtle Beach. And at the end of the summer, I had been a student at University of South Florida in Tampa, and I was on my way back and stopped at the center for a week or so. At the end of that stay, I went to Debbie, then it was Debbie Peterson. Again, she's Debbie Peterson, which those of you who know Debbie Peterson, Meyer Peterson, that's an interesting story. But anyway, Debbie was the, Hannah also is another name she's known by. She was the receptionist at the Gateway at Myrtle Beach. And she had all the records of Baba lovers who had been to the center. And I said to her, do you have any records of people who are in the Tampa area? And she went to her files and she pulled up about 10 different people. And then she said, and Ralph and Stella Hernandez lived near there. They lived in Indian Rocks Beach. And she said, but there is a friend of mine who you could call. I don't know if he'd be interested in participating in meetings, but he might be, and he's a wonderful man. And his name is Tom Decker, and he's a medical doctor. Here's his number, and you call him up and tell him that I suggested that you call him. So I got back to Tampa in early to mid-September, I guess, and we started school late in those days in Florida. And I called Tom one evening, and he answered, and I said, "Hello, Tom. My name is John Welshons, and I've just been at the Mayor Baba Center in Myrtle Beach, and I was talking to them about the possibility of starting a Mayor Baba group in Tampa, and Debbie said that you were a friend of hers and that you might be interested. She wasn't sure, but she suggested I call you." Well, Tom is basically silent. And I think I'm hearing the sound of him crying. And finally he starts saying, "Oh, Baba, oh, Baba, oh, Baba." And I'm just sitting there on the other end of the phone. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Yes." And finally he said, "John, that Baba should have you call me at this moment is just the most extraordinary thing I've ever experienced." And maybe he didn't say the most extraordinary thing he'd ever experienced, but one of them. And he said, "I would absolutely be interested in helping you start a Baba group in Tampa." And so that I don't forget later, I want to say that many, many, many months later, possibly even years later, Tom shared with me that he was going through an incredibly difficult time in his life. He was very depressed, and that he said that call saved his life. And at any rate, Debbie was actually, her grandmother lived in Sarasota, Debbie Meyer, so Peterson. So she was going to be coming down to visit her grandmother about a week later. And she said, "I can meet with you. We'll all get together." And we got in touch with Ralph and Stella Hernandez. They offered to host a gathering at their house in Indian Rocks Beach. And I called up some of the people whose names and numbers Debbie had given me. And we arranged one Saturday afternoon in late September of 1972 to meet at Ralph and Stella's house. And that was where I first met Tom. And someone was speaking about Tom and cars. Tom rolls up in this beautiful silver Porsche 911. And I
Silver, it was orange.
the first one was silver.
Italian car.
What he had then was silver. And he came, we had a wonderful time. And we arranged to meet, as I recall, the next night at my home in Tampa. And but that first meeting at Ralph and Stella's house was the first Tampa Bay Baba Group meeting. The second one was a night or two later at my apartment in Tampa. And we started holding the meetings there, as I recall, on Sunday nights at first. And then we expanded to having a discourse meeting on Tuesday nights, I think. And an incredible group of people gathered in those early days. I think at our first meeting at my house, when we actually advertised it in the school newspaper and the local maybe the Tampa Tribune also. We had like 45 or 50 people in my apartment, which was quite amazing. And eventually, we started sharing. So, and Tom would schedule a meeting at his house. We would alternate between my apartment and his apartment in Clearwater. And so that just went on and on. I was there until 1975 and then moved back to New Jersey. And the meetings just continued. And it was always such a delight for me to drop by. And actually, once Tom had the Baba apartment next door to his condo, I would stay there often and have extended visits with him. We would have such wonderful times. I mean, Tom was an extraordinary host. And as I mentioned recently in a piece I wrote about Tom, he was someone who really, really treasured solitude. And to the point that if he was in a mood for solitude, don't bother him. But when he was having guests or going out for socializing, he was one of the most gracious, wonderful, warm hosts who was just attentive to everybody having fun. And we loved to go to Burns Steakhouse as often as possible, which was probably maybe at most twice a year. But so many wonderful meals. Chief Charlie's was a favorite place in Clearwater. Some of you may remember that, not far from where Tom lived. And I got to preside at Tom and Colleen's wedding, which was quite an extraordinary experience. And so we stayed in close touch from the time we met in 1972, as close as possible because, you know, most of the time he wasn't really able to speak on the phone very well in the last few years. But we always had a heart-to-heart connection. And there was one story I want to share with you also about cars and the orange Porsche. So this is just a tender look at Tom's human side. One day, I think it was in 1974 or 75, he had taken the silver Porsche to be serviced at the Porsche dealership. And he came home with the new orange Porsche. And he told me the story. I said, well, how did you wind up with a new Porsche? And he said, well, you know, I had mine in for service and I was just wandering around on the showroom floor and I saw the brand new model of mine, the 911. And he said, I looked at it and he said, the price on it was, you know, I can share this now because this was in 1975. My God, 50 years ago. The price of a new Porsche in those days was $13,500. I remember it well because Tom said at that time, nobody in their right mind would spend that much money on a car, but the next thing he knew, he was driving it home. So he drove over to Tampa to show it to me, and we went out to dinner. And then shortly thereafter, he said, you know, I want to test the new car out. So he said, why don't you and I drive up to Myrtle Beach in it? I said, that's a great idea. I would love that. So we made plans and we booked ourselves for, I think, a week at the Baba Center. And when the day was coming that we were going to leave, I said, what time do you want to leave? And he said, about 11 o'clock at night. And I said, did I hear you right? You want to go at 11 o'clock at night? And he said, yeah, I think that's a good time. So I said, okay. So we packed our bags and he came over and we loaded up the Porsche And I said, "You any idea where we're going to stay tonight?" He said, "Oh, we'll just drive until we get tired, and then we'll find a place. We'll find a motel." Okay. So now we go out on the highway and we go up I-75 for a little ways, and then we get off, and he's going on Route 301, which was an older secondary road going up to North Florida. I'm still oblivious to the fact that the reason that he wanted to leave at 11 o'clock at night was that he wanted to really test out the Porsche and drive at about 105 or 110 miles per hour all the way up Route 301 in the middle of the night. It was quite a ride. And he was an excellent driver, so I never felt in danger, except that we got into this little town of Folkestone, Georgia, just over the line into Georgia. Now it's about 2 o'clock in the morning, and he stopped because he wanted to look at the map. In those days, we didn't have GPS, so you had to look at a map. And he was a little confused. And I see that the only thing open in the town of Folkestone, Georgia, at 2 o'clock in the morning was a gas station. And there were about 10 guys in the gas station standing up and looking at us. Like, I said, those people seem a little suspicious of us, Tom. I think maybe we better move on. And he goes, okay. So we start out on the new route that he's figured out. And we're about 5 miles outside of Folkestone, Georgia, when he looks in the rearview mirror and there's a car coming up closer and closer. And he goes, uh-oh. And I said, what's the matter? He said, that may be a policeman behind us. Pretty soon the red light goes on. And then we see coming from the other direction, there's a police car with a flashing light coming at us. Now we're on a 2-lane road in the middle of nowhere in southern Georgia at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we get pulled over to the side of the road. And I'm thinking, oh boy, we're going to jail. And policeman comes up to the side of the car, license and registration. Another one comes to my side of the car. He's flashing his flashlight in the car. And I'm thinking, oh, Lord. And so policeman asks him to get out of the car. And then they ask me to get out of the car. And Tom says, is there a problem, officer? And the officer says, might be a problem. And finally, he discusses things with, he calls back to headquarters and he talks to the other policeman who's come and driven his car right up in front of ours, so we can't move. So they've got us wedged in with two police cars. And finally, I think they decided that so the officer says there was a robbery back in Folkestone. Drugstore was robbed. And the getaway car fits the description of your car. And, so some conversation went back and forth. And Tom finally said, they asked, what's your profession, sir? He said, I'm a physician. Well, I think they finally decided that we didn't look very suspicious, and probably people who rob drugstores in Folkestone, Georgia don't drive brand new Porsches and aren't physicians. So they let us go. And we continued on our way. And I might say that Tom did moderate the speed at which he was driving after that. That sort of slowed him down. And we finally found a Holiday Inn that we checked into and stayed overnight and just recovered from that whole episode. Because we both, after we talked afterwards, we were both sure we were going to jail in Folkestone, Georgia. But off we went, thanks to Baba. And the next morning, he said, I want you to drive the car for a while. I said, me? I can't drive your Porsche. He said, oh, no, you must. You absolutely have to. He got out, he parked the car, he got out, told me to get in the driver's seat. And I'm driving along. Well, he starts getting mad at me because I'm driving the speed limit. And he's saying, you can't drive a car like this at this low speed, test it out. And I said, well, I'm intimidated enough about driving your new Porsche at all, but I don't think I'm really geared to drive it at 100 miles an hour. So he got back in, but he drove more slowly because it was daylight hours then. But it was a wonderful trip. We had a wonderful time at the Baba Center, and it was just one of many, many, many extraordinary visits he and I had. I've just always been so honored to consider him a spiritual brother, and just so grateful to have known him. That's my story.
Thank you.
What story. Wonderful. Wow. I imagine there are a lot of folks who have stories to tell. I don't know if some of you know about raising your hands digitally. It's a way to let us know that you'd like to talk. So there's that way, or you can just raise your hand uh, if you have something to share. I'm seeing, well, there are a lot of you who are darkened out. So, yeah. Oh, Mark and Lisa. All right.
Jai Baba, hi everybody.
Baba,
Jai
Mark and
Baba.
Lisa.
Wonderful to be together on such an occasion as showing some love for our great pal, Tom Decker. It's making my heart sing to think about the good times that we had with him. And I really treasure those memories deeply. I first met Tom in 1982. It was my first trip to India, and he was there. And I made a note, mental note, that he lives in Florida, so that a few years later, quite a few years later, when Lisa and I started working down in Florida, we gave Tom a ring and we started attending those Baba meetings. That was in the early 90s. And we had a wonderful time. Because we work as musicians, we were working in the Tampa area quite a bit in those days. So often we would stay overnight after the Baba meeting at the Baba apartment that John mentioned. And those are some wonderful memories too. We get to spend a lot of quality time with Tom and the rest of the Decker family, including Mom and Ann, and of course, Charlie. And we send them our love. Of course, EJ has passed along and we miss her. And one of the things that Tom turned us on to was the book God Calling. And I know some of you are familiar with that book. And so Lisa picked out one of the readings from God Calling, and she's going to read it for you.
This is for those of you who aren't familiar. Tom read this pretty much every day, as I can recall. He was very attached to it. I later learned, actually this year, learned that Jane Haynes, one of the founders of the Maher Center, also read this book every day. It's a book by two supposedly anonymous couple that were basically transmitting from God.
They were called the listeners.
The listeners, and so it's a 365-day thing. There's a entry for every day. So, as Tom was talking in his story about saying that he didn't quite resonate with the Bible, his heart didn't quite resonate. I know that this is kind of from a Christian perspective, but it's much more heart-centered, and I think heart-opening for me as well as it was for Tom, in terms of transmitting or translating what the love that God gives us and the lessons to be learned from that and in that. It's funny, this original copy was one that Tom suggested we get when we met with him in the 90s. I got it in the early 90s, and it's a little threadbare, but I've had it ever since. It's gone through phases of reading and not reading, but I've been back to it again this past year. And I do think of Tom really often when when I read the day's entries. I just thought it'd be kind of fun to, and they're very short. You know, there's like 4 days on these 2 pages, but I thought it would be nice to read the reading from May 8th, which is Tom's birthday, for him, and you get a little flavor of not only this book, but of something that Tom held very dear, as daily. I mean, Tom was a Baba lover to the nth degree,
Through and through.
and always an inspiration for us in
Yeah,
terms of Meher Baba.
absolutely.
But that Christian side of him, I think, was really drawn to this as we are. I mean, I'm a Jewish girl and I love it. So obviously it transcends any one religion. I'll just read this quickly because that's what I wanted to contribute. It's May 8th entry. It's called The Rest of God. I lead you. The way is clear. Go forward, unafraid. I am beside you. Listen, listen. Listen to my voice. My hand is controlling all. Remember that I can work through you better when you are at rest. Go very slowly, very quietly from one duty to the next, taking time to rest and pray between. Do not be too busy. Take all in order as I say. The rest of God is in a realm beyond all man's activities. Venture there often, and you will indeed find peace and joy. Anyway, just wanted to thank Tom, wherever he is, wherever his spirit is, for inspiring us to become closer to Baba. And as John said, being the consummate host, he made an incredible cup of coffee. And when we would stay over,
And chai.
and he always would have us in the morning for chai and coffee. And we have fond memories of sitting around his kitchen table with him in the mornings when we'd be able to visit for those days, and of the wonderful Tuesday night Baba meetings that went on for years and years at his apartment. So wherever you are, Tom, J. Baba.
J. Baba.
Love you.
I have a quick humorous story from my 1982 trip when I met Tom. He was sort of quasi on duty as a medical person there in Mehrabad. He was on pilgrimage, but he was helping out. And Agnes Barron was also on pilgrimage there. Now, Agnes Barron founded Mount out there in Ojai, California, and she had quite a reputation. That was my first meeting with her, as a very individualistic, stubborn person. Baba called her his watchdog, and she needed to be that in order to preserve that piece of property. Anyways, she's quite a contrarian to some degree. And anyways, she'd gotten heat exhaustion there because she was out in the midday sun with no hat on. And so Tom tended to her and got her feeling better and all that. And he was letting her know that she needed to wear a hat. Well, it's hard to tell Agnes what to do. And so she would kind of go into her little contrary mode there, and then Tom would very gently come back with, but you should wear the hat, and the hat is good. And she would kind of go off again because she didn't like being told what to do. And Tom would come back with his gentle doctor manner, and I really didn't think that Agnes was going to wear the hat, but you know what? The next day, there she was wearing the hat. He won. His gentle manner. That was sweet. It was fun to watch him work. J. Baba, that's all I have.
J. Baba.
I'd like to share that when Danny and I first came to Baba, we were invited. Well, Charlie was a major influence in coming to Baba because it's a long story, but there was a song that Baba gave me called Stinking Garbage, and I was performing it Danny and I were performing it at a folk kind of place in the Spanish Quarter. And Charlie came in and said, hey, that song you were doing, he recognized me from a previous group many years before. He said, hey, that song you were doing, Stinking Garbage, could you play that for a guy coming from India? I said, Okay, well, I guess I could, but it sounded very weird. Anyway, before Bao came, we were invited to something. I think it was when Dr. Tom retired from being a doctor, and we were invited to his condo, and he had all these quotes on his refrigerator and everywhere, and the atmosphere of that place was just supercharged with Baba's presence. And I thought, this guy really has something going, and then of course we met Bao, who just blew our minds, like this guy is as genuine as can be, and it was just, bing, 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 Charlie, Tom, Bao, everybody was just like, yeah, I think Mayor Baba is real. And but Tom was just so generous, like, when he bought a second condo next door to his so that he could host the meetings there, and if the twins came or Mark and Lisa or anybody came, they could stay there. He was just like a perfect host. Just the greatest guy. And like they said, he made great coffee and chai, and his mom would make these wonderful cakes, and it was just like heaven. We were just in heaven. The whole Baba group was just so welcoming of our music and everything. And so that was 1993. We came to Baba, and we haven't looked back since. Of course, Danny's no longer with us, but our group is a great group. We still meet on Zoom and occasionally in person, but very occasionally. But I'm just so grateful for this group because it's one of the best in the world, I think. So thank you, Tom, for your service. Jai Baba.
Jay Bama, thank you. I might add a car story. When I first, Tom told me about Baba, traveling to Florida in 70, he had just learned from Ken Lux about Baba. Tried to tell my dad at a dinner table, maybe in around Christmas, I'm not sure, November. And I heard the word Baba, but I had friends and we went out drinking all the time. But on our way to Florida, in his Alfa Romeo red at 90 miles an hour, he handed me the book on reincarnation, or the advancing stream of life. And I opened it up, and well, actually before that, he handed me the universal message, and I heard a different voice speaking as I read. And then he lent me this book, Advancing Stream of Life, and I was enthused or interested in the 18,000 worlds with human life on them. So I was like really hooked then. So that's my story of coming to Baba. I like to keep it short because I'm not as gifted as a speaker as you guys, but I'm glad to see Go Hair there, who's very gifted, Lauren and Sheila, Anthony, Jane, Peter, and all the rest of you for joining in. Tom was 6 years older than me, and there is a difference. He liked his solitude, and I'm learning more about him from this meeting, especially Pam's video. It's how I got born into that family. I'm very thankful that Tom and Ann were there. But the only downside is going through life. Oh, you're Tom and Ann's brother? Come right in. I skated through a lot of stuff. But knowing about Bob has been the best thing I have. So,
Jay Baba.
Ralph, you've got a hand up.
Yes. I've been, my curiosity has been tickled regarding the history of the Miami group. Because when I first came to Baba, people I met, the first time I came to the center was December, just a day or two after Christmas. I hitchhiked to the center from Silver Spring, Maryland. And from there, rendezvoused with friends with whom I'd been in college in Texas, but I dropped out of college. I just drove away from college like it was a cloud, put it on the iCloud and to come to Baba. And so and my parents lived in Silver Spring. So went to, didn't mean to tell my history, to Miami for a rock concert with friends from Texas. I rendezvoused with them in Fort Lauderdale for a rock concert at the racetrack. And we did that. And they asked me I arrived there at sunup. And then we slept and went to the concert later, talked about Baba. And then I knew nothing about Baba lovers in Miami. What the idea didn't exist for me. That concept hadn't come in. Baba groups, just Baba's name was there. And later, I ended up living in Myrtle Beach a bit before 69 and went to Darshan. And I met people like I met Hermes, who became a friend. I ended up living in Myrtle Beach. And eventually met Ann Forbes. And her husband had passed away, who came from Miami. And I knew the Bullocks, meaning that would be Dave and Cal Bullock. And I think David is living or teaches as a professor in Kansas, the last I heard. And I don't know what Cal's doing. The last I knew of Cal, he was in South Carolina with the family. And I wondered how that all came to be. The Giles were not mentioned, nor did I see them in the photographs. Were they a different clique of, did they have a separate thing going, or did that just transmigrate? Can you help us out with that? Any of you?
There was a Miami group, a big Miami group, and then there was a Tampa group.
Oh, okay.
So that was perhaps the Miami group. They were pretty
Yeah.
big.
Yeah. No, there was Scott O'Neill was from there.
Yeah, I think he was from Miami.
Yeah.
John, do you know?
Well, I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, where was
Oh.
Scott O'Neill based in his group?
Miami, yeah.
Okay.
And that was in the days when I was in Tampa, when we started the Baba Group of Tampa. The Miami group was hosted by Bill and Peggy Stevens on Key Biscayne. They had a house on Key Biscayne, and that was a big group, Miami group.
Yeah.
Very significant and wonderful.
So Tom was in Tampa,
Tampa.
that man.
Mhm.
Right.
Oh, now I'm beginning to get an education. Thank you, Jay Baba.
And he
Yeah,
met Hermes. He met Hermes in India, and I think that was in 73, 72, 73, 74. I'm not sure. And they became good friends.
yeah,
And he
good.
contributed a lot to
Yeah.
Hermes' collection. And Hermes would send him photos as a thank you, and I would take the photos and do something with them. And I'm still inundated with photos, but that was a plus to know Hermes.
Charlie is the frame walla.
Oh yeah, I'm the frame walla.
And he manipulates pixels on different digital photos.
A
And
manipulator.
it's very,
And there
very
were
good.
really beautiful photos in the Bow apartment, the condo next to Tom's that he bought for
Yeah.
Baba meetings.
Created quite an ambiance when we used to meet there in the as the Tampa group.
Yeah,
Tom was a great
they were really
photographer.
Yeah,
special,
Tom was a
special photos.
Tom was a great
Excellent
photographer
photographer.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had that in common.
Yeah.
Hi Mariah. How you doing? Jay Baba. Good to see you. You look the same as you did 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever. Oh, you're muted. Yeah. Anyway. Anthony, Jay Baba, Goer, love you.
Peter, were you finished? Did you have something more to say? I see your hand still up. For some reason, you're muted and you're talking. I don't get it.
No, I was talking to myself. No, I haven't started. I just looked like I was gonna pass. Um, I guess it's my turn now. Oh yeah, I'm just jumping as a jackrabbit right now. But I remember when I moved down. By the way, when it comes to aging, I got to the Baba group at Tampa 25 years ago. It seems like everyone in 25 years has aged 5 years. Looks like people have aged about 5 years. That's about it. And by the way, Charlie, I remember listening to you discourse in Dr. Tom's condo, and you sounded brilliant because to me you were brilliant. You are brilliant.
I was brilliant.
You were brilliant. You are brilliant. It's always awesome talking to you. I remember traveling down from New York to Florida because I was gonna move down to Florida.
Solomosi. Okay.
No.
Yeah, the Notorious. All right, maybe I gotta keep this shorter than I.
No, go ahead and talk. You guys have got to mute if you're not going to be on the screen because Peter's got the podium right now.
Yeah, I had traveled down to, I think I went through Myrtle Beach and I asked them if there was any Baba groups down in Tampa Bay and down in Florida. And they're like, yeah, there's a Tampa group. And I'm like, wow, like, what are the odds of that? But then I realized I do get lucky. So I remember coming down there and I was given Dr. Tom's phone number. I think he was the greeter for the meeting, the contact person. I'm thinking maybe Jane, but I think it was Dr. Tom. And I remember talking to him. And I think, like Charlie said, he was always so welcoming. And sometimes when I thought to myself, I was wrong in thinking about something because at one point, let's just say I was looking to say, who did I feel loved by in the Tampa Bay group? Let me do the acid test. I said, Pam Rubenstein, hands down, number one. Then it was maybe Fred, and then Sheila Burns. And then I started thinking, who else? Okay, there was Charlie, there was Dr. Tom, there was Jane, there was Rita, there was going down the line. And I felt like, okay, just about everybody. It's changed, but still, Dr. Tom was always really nice to me and very welcoming to me. And I regret deeply that I couldn't receive it most of the time. I think I just couldn't receive it. but I do remember how he was such a great host, despite myself. And
Thank you, Peter.
hi, is that my time to? Am I getting yanked?
No,
I guess I have to expect to be yanked, so I'll pass with that.
oh, there's nobody else on board. You can finish. All
I
right.
think I have my gag order. I'd like to talk more about the gag order, so I'll leave it at that.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I do want to mention one thing about John's meetings. I remember going there a few times, and you had Enid Korf there one time. That was impressive. And the guitar player, I think, is hmm, John Carlyle,
John Carlyle,
had,
Johann.
had an Ovation guitar
Uh-huh.
with the circle. I don't know, it was the opening of the guitar was strange, and it was kind of a
Bowl shape.
bowl shape. Well, that was a fascinating part of your meetings, as I remember.
Yeah,
I
well, it actually was Tom who connected with Enid. And
okay.
anybody who doesn't know, Enid Korf was Corfe, was the spelling of her last name. And she was one of the original European Baba lovers who spent time with Baba in Europe in the 1930s. And so Tom called me up one day and he said, "You'll never believe who just called me." And I said, "Who?" And he said, "Enid Korf." And I said, "Who's Enid Korf?" And I later found out, and I, was reminded when I looked at the God Man, the photos in the God Man, and are several places in which Enid was mentioned in the God Man, and photos where she was included with Kitty and Elizabeth and Margaret Krask and Delia de Leon and so on. And well, it turned out that in 1970, whatever it was, I don't think it was, no, it was 73. It would have been the fall of 73. Maybe it was the spring of 70. I don't know. But anyway, Tom calls me up and he says that he's gotten a call from this woman. And he said she was so extraordinary, shall we say, that at first he wasn't quite sure it was legitimate, but she was very eccentric. She was from England, so she had a very strong British accent, somewhat like Kitty. And so she had been kind of estranged from Baba for something like 20 years. And all of a sudden had this vision, an inner experience of Baba, and decided that she needed to go to Myrtle Beach and reconnect with everybody there, and came to Florida. She was living in Sarasota at the time, actually on Anna Maria Island, and she decided she was going to set up a Baba Center on Anna Maria Island, and she was just wild, just wild. At one point, I remember visiting with Kitty in Myrtle Beach, and Kitty said, "Now, does Enid still have that wild idea about establishing a Baba Center in Florida?" And I said, "I think she does." And Kitty's response to that was, "Oh dear, Baba stole her money away from her once before, and I think he's going to do it again." Because I think she really couldn't afford what she had in mind. And she did spend a lot of money and wound up having to go back to England because she ran out of money. But she was just wild and delightful. And so I first met her when she showed up at my house in, the orange Porsche with Tom. And we went out to dinner, and she was quite a character.
I remember she said, "He took all my money," meaning Baba. Baba took all my money.
Uh-huh.
And she left Tom a chest, like a foot locker, a small foot locker. And Tom didn't open it up for the longest time. And I imagine the missing book was in there
Ah,
for years, for years. Well, he finally opened it up. I don't know when, but it contained some old flyers, maybe, and some rocks. And it was a big disappointment that the missing book wasn't in there, but it kept us guessing for a while. Anyway,
yeah, she was a great addition to the group for the short time that she was there.
Excuse me, John, quick question. How fast did you say the Porsche went?
I stopped looking at 110.
Oh, hoping for more dramatic. Oh, thank you. Stop
I
looking.
just, it
Oh, my God.
was quite a ride.
Rosalie, you got a hand up.
hey, Rosalie, Jonathan, Jay Baba.
Jay
Jay
Baba.
Baba. I don't have a car story.
Blue bus.
I couldn't resist. I I like coming to whenever Baba lovers go. And it seems like a lot of us are going right now, but I want to know more of that person because I would have my personal likes and dislikes of whatever person, but it's in a cosmic experience for me to go and hear about whoever. Some don't get it, and I do not think the celebration is celebrating that we were lucky enough to be here when Baba was on earth. It's really it's like it's just such a precious thing and not an easy thing. Not an easy thing. But anyway, I knew Tom. I remember coming down to Florida when Bao was there. I came with can't remember her name, the aging process, Tall, Gabriella Tall.
Oh, yeah.
And Bao had me come because he didn't want her to drive alone. She had a special car she drove in. Anyway, I came. It was a fabulous time there and meeting the lovers. One thing I did have a bit of a correspondence with Tom, and we were both really into that God calling. I mean, we both raised Catholics, on and on and on, the Catholic thing. And he spoke of the ecumenical thing happening. And then he mentioned Teilhard de Chardin. I have this little quote by my bed because he was like a renegade, future thinking Jesuit. And Tom went to the Jesuit college it was. Yeah. Where did he go? Is it Notre Dame?
Holy Cross,
Holy
Worcester, Massachusetts.
Ah, yeah. So anyway, this quote just speaks of how ahead of his time he was. He was a Jesuit. That's the order, Catholic order he was in. But they shipped him off to China because he was a free thinker. And you're not in an order. You have to stay in order when you're in that order. But this quote is so good, and it shows why the avatar came. One liner. Humanity has been sleeping and still sleeps, lulled within the narrowly confining joys of its closed loves. So when I come to these celebrations of people that have gone on, it's not the celebration for the person, I don't think. I don't believe that at all. It's to give us courage to go on in the best way we know how, because as this manifestation goes on, it's really not a picnic, and I've heard certain things said at times by bio culture, and and I didn't like the idea of maybe having to eat bark and grass, and so I don't even like to think of that side of it. Could be the part of the manifestation to make America. Baba said it was that we could lead the world spiritually, but first we will have to be awakened. So I would say all these gatherings we're having, and Baba gave us internet so we can gather. It's just like such a celebration of oneness, because that's all Baba was about, the oneness, that we're not separate from God. We are one with God. You and are not we, but one. And it's like we get it and we don't get it. But I tell you how I really get it, and it's in the mystical language. There's a lot about the mystical language, things that I don't want to get, that are in my face when I read it. But it's like, it is such an offering that Baba worked in the blue bus time. I show it again because and people were crammed in there. This was made in Mexico. This is from a Baba lover friend of mine in Green Hope Farm, Molly. Wonderful person. Anyway, she sends it, she painted it blue. It was green. And
a perfect lead-in to your talks on Thursday at 3 about the blue bus mystical language.
we're sharing this red treasure in plain sight. It's been in plain sight since the 1940s, a little before. And what Baba said about it in the mystical language is it's not necessary to understand. And he also said it was, I here act in mind, in vibration, to make in you life grow. I think Tom would appreciate my sharing, because just like when he heard when that person says about God descended in human form, it's like, this is a tremendous thing, Baba, taking us from reason to intuition. And boy, I can't wait. I have to say, I'm hanging on to the bus, and I'm betting on that mystical language, because also in it he says this mystical language in I is in I the experience of God. Now, if Baba said that, that should be taken seriously. Anyway, I just had to say that, and it will help you out of the narrowly confining joys of your close loves, because we all have that narrowly confining thing that we're dealing with. And Baba says, don't feel down by what I bring up in you, because it all has to come up. It's like, the cops say, okay, everything out of your pocket, everything out. Yeah. It all has to come out. And of course, Baba just because he does it on a day-to-day thing. But I would say, because this mystical language is vibrational, you can read it to yourself. You do not need a priest or priestess to share it with you. I mean, that is like it's a free for all. It's a free for all. And the new religion, Baba said, is experience. Is experience. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
I said too much. You maybe not.
Hey, Baba,
Hey,
thank you.
Baba.
Hey, Baba, but I did totally appreciate Tom and our exchanges, that because it's so lucky. Like Narina say, she met impersonal God. She was, but Baba wanted her to meet God personal. Now we get the same thing. We've met, even though we're on his coattails, but a lot of us have met him. I feel I've met him my last time. I met him. Yeah, he was just too beautiful to miss. And if you were a musician, you certainly met him, because they were all love songs that he evoked stepping on the planet. Love songs and fun songs. He didn't want us to be down and dreary, but yeah. Anyway, Jai Baba,
Jai
to
Baba.
oneness. Oneness is rest in being. Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba. Hey, Baba.
Anthony.
Hey, Jay Baba, everyone. Wow, I wish I had more to share about Tom. I came into the Tampa Bay group a little late in the game. When we started doing the Zooms during the COVID era, I came to Baba through Temple of the Universe, a little spiritual center in North Florida here. And when our spiritual center shut down over the pandemic, I had the good fortune to start Zooming with everyone, with Charlie and Pam and Go Hair and Mark and Lisa and Lauren, Sheila, everyone in our group. And yeah, wow, as a fellow medical professional, a registered nurse, I couldn't believe when I heard Tom was an emergency room physician, and he has such a gentleness about him. That's really what I remember the most. He just has this kind of melting puppy dog eyes, and whenever he would share, it was just in the most gentle way. And I started reading God Calling and God at Eventide every day because of Tom. And a kind of neat thing that I remember him telling me, Baba had talked about that book. I wrote down the little reference he told me. So it was in the Awakener magazine. Baba had told this, I think it was some type of writer in England who was a Baba lover, and told that man to give the God Calling book to Fred Marks. He wanted him to have that. So that was the neat Baba connection to that book, which to me, I take that as Baba really verifying that that book was the real deal. But yeah, it's so funny, the connection to the Tampa group and Tom. When I was at University of Florida and I would drive home to go see my parents in Miami, a lot of times I wouldn't want to take I-70. I wouldn't want to take the turnpike. I would want to drive down that Gulf Coast on I-75 and stop off at the beaches and go to the Everglades, drive across there. And I ended up getting into nursing school after graduating University of Florida and went to USF. And I spent a couple years down there. And Clearwater Beach is where I would go to meditate and watch the sunset down there. And I fell in love with that area. And then it's incredible that, found out Tom was on Clearwater Beach. And then I would go down to Sarasota and Nokomis, and then Mark and Lisa, were down there, and went and saw them, and went to Sanibel and Captiva as a kid, and then found out Go Hair was down there. So just all these incredible connections. So I feel so fortunate to have known Tom for, that short time in the Tampa group, and feel like he's with me every morning reading God at Eventide. And I feel like his gentle spirit in that book are what get me started every morning. So it's just beautiful. I love you all, and thank you, Jay Baba.
Jai Baba,
Baba.
very touching. Very good.
We're so glad you joined the group, Anthony and Emmy.
It's changed our life. It's, I think before coming to the group, the Baba connection was just through the center and, reading discourses and all that, and being around you guys. I feel like we were taken into that. I don't even know how to put it into words. Just that whole energy you guys have of being around the Mandali and that whole era. It's like, oh my God, what is this? Like, this is so real now. It's not something out of a book. It's like you're living what's in the book, in the books, in the stories of the Mandali, and you guys are all living that, and you can just feel it. And coming from someone who didn't grow up in that or go over to India and walking into it, you can just feel how much you guys all give that off. And it's so, I don't know. Thank you for the opportunity to just like walk into that without having went to India or anything. You guys just give that off.
Thank you, Baba.
You're all in it.
It's a two-way street, Anthony and Emmy. We're getting a lot back from your love as well and your
Yes,
devotion to Baba.
absolutely.
Wow. We just feel, Baba says that this love is transmitted directly from heart to heart, and we just feel like we got our flames ignited from all of you, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, and how lucky we are to have Goer.
That's right.
Her father was Minu
Yeah.
Karas, one of Baba's most intimate Mandali, and she has so many stories to share. So it's been a love feast.
Blessed to be with all of you every Tuesday. Blessed to know you. Trust me, we are all handpicked by Baba. So you have to know that and to know that all of us in our own ways give so much to each other. And that's exactly what Baba wanted. And Tom, of course, I had the privilege of knowing Tom only the last few years on Zoom. But as Anthony said, and I echo his sentiments, absolutely, he's the most gentle spirit, the way he came across, and you could just feel Baba's love exuding from him. You just had to, even though I never met him in person, but it was just like being with him all along. That it was just his gentle ways, his gentle spirit. It just uplifted you every time you spoke to him. So we will all miss you, Tom, and wherever you are, be at peace, be at rest in Baba's warm embrace. So Jai Baba.
Great, Baba. Thank you. Thank you, Betty, for hosting.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for showing up.
Mhm.
And
Shaw, did you have something to say?
Hello, everybody. A long time no see, Pam.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom, I wrote a little something as you guys were talking, and it basically, I kept on losing it because, when you write it in the chat, then if you go away and come back, it's gone.
Right.
So I finally wrote it in some notes. I remember Tom was very thoughtful, as you all said, a gentle person, one pointed in his focus on Baba. He went out of his way to acknowledge one's presence in a way that your heart experienced, and as his sincere inclusive, as his sincere effort to be inclusive, as you said. And this was unusual to me because this kind of inclusiveness that you felt was really something that was really something that was special to Baba's close ones, and the fact that he had this quality, I found to be very special. Tom's focus on God, that we all experience, we all here experience, and he as well, personally through through Mayor Baba was real. And I feel Charlie was really a special addition to what was special about Tom. So I don't really know how to express that except to say that Charlie, your energy and your brother's energy in combination was like a personality in itself. So it's almost like
He was the good cop. I'm the bad cop.
well, you know,
Never.
actually, Charlie, I'm gonna, I feel that you have a very special sense of humor, but one really knows you, um, one knows that you're a very sincere person and that you feel things very deeply in your heart, and you forget things that are important to you, and that is noted. That was something always noted by me. But like I said, I just feel that the combination of you two was very special, and I'm glad that at least one of you is still here. And
Not long though, I'll tell you.
well, you know, not long. Maybe
Seeing
many of us.
Tom, seeing Tom go down, 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 it was very tough, an experience to you know, just to think that we got the same DNA and not to, you know, it was traumatic.
Yeah,
Actually.
yeah. I'm sure. You know, which like I remember in the beginning of 1975, going to India, meeting Mira for the first time, and even though it was 6 years since since her Baba had passed, she was still feeling it so much, you know. So, you know, I just there's unconditional love is a really special thing, and I think that that's one thing that we're fortunate for is that we all have experienced a lot of unconditional love through each other, you know. So at least you know you still have family here, and you still have you. But yeah, that's the part thing.
Thank you, Shaw. Very touching.
Lauren, Sheila, you want to give something?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm echoing things that have already been said in a sense, but for me, Tom's entire self being so focused on Baba, and then also so simultaneously focused on sharing Baba's love, with others and helping others to know of Baba and to just keep, whenever to just keep the focus on Baba, and in such a way that he knew, I think, just inherently that so long as we're focusing on Baba, whatever Baba's work is on him, Tom, and then that other person who he was dealing with would get done. And so, in my experience, and of course, we were always generally in the context of Baba context when we were meeting, but even within that context, lots of times conversation, um, spreads around to other topics as it should in a group of friends, But Tom was always on the lookout for, a way to tie it into Baba, reference something Baba said, point back at Baba, and to me, just that. But did so in a very like gentle and just sweet way that was so unobtrusive. You could notice it, but it would just be so welcoming. It would like let's do this sort of thing. And so for me, it's my coming to Baba here in the Tampa Bay area was greatly facilitated and nurtured by Tom. And I was in St. Pete, and Tom and they were at the time I came. There were meetings here in St. Pete at Laura Erasmo's house, and then Tom had meetings too sometimes, and eventually the meetings moved up to Tom's apartment. But to me, those two people, sort of, Tom is a very smart guy, well educated, But to me, it was like Laura was Baba's head and Tom was Baba's, pointed to Baba's head, and for me, that was important. But Tom was like pulling the heart strings and always pointing to like the heart element and making sure that the head and the heart were harmonious, And so, Tom was just a beautiful, uh, I mean, really important, I think one of Baba's great workers here in Florida for sure. I mean, he had a, direct hand, honestly, in helping Baba collect a lot of, of his sheep into the fold.
Phil and Diana and Bow and
Not
all
just
the,
those people. I think he brought people here for us, but Tom helped bring people to the local community. But so many of Baba's, so many people I know personally came to Baba here in St. Pete in the Tampa Bay area through Tom, or Tom played a role in that. And I really feel like Tom was sort of like the shepherd's assistant, like help keeping people in the fold, just helping keep the in a gentle, loving, kind way, not in a policemanly way, but just a really loving thing. And I think he was just an instrumental worker for Baba here in town. I guess that's what I really want to say. And he was such a sweet, loving person.
yeah, and on a personal level, he was always he would be our doctor on call, like if the kids were sick or if I had a problem,
Yeah.
needed antibiotics and we could, he would just do that. That was his nature.
One thing I remember, like when he, one time we were having a Bob meeting at the house. One of the kids was a little, had the cold or something, and they were real down in the dumps. And Tom just came in, and he just chatted for a couple minutes with them and just had that, he had this sort of well, first of all, just so loving and kind, filled with Baba's love, of course, but also married to that was this sort of bedside manner or doctor vibe that just him talking to you made you feel better. The way that he reacted to you in you feeling a little ill made you feel better in and of itself. Like he just had a certain sort of magic that came with his, I assume, long experience as a doctor. But it really was like a visceral thing. You just felt better when Tom started talking to you about your illness. You just felt better. So it was amazing. So anyway, yeah, sorely missed, and really, I just as a worker for Baba, top notch. All right, J Bob.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about Tom being our doctor on call, because one time I got the shingles and I knew it was shingles because I'd seen someone where it worked that had it. So I identified it right off the bat as shingles, and I called Tom and he called me in a prescription and nipped it right in the bud. I had just gotten, and so it wasn't a severe case. I had so many times that Danny and I called him on various, prescription things, needs, and he would be there for us, with no questions asked, just a great, great friend.
Yeah.
Betty, do you need to go? I mean, I know it was only supposed to be an hour and a half, so.
Oh, there's no, fine.
Okay.
That's a guess. No, it's been wonderful.
Thank you for
Yeah, thank
doing
you.
this.
I think Rosalie or Jonathan needs to.
Yeah, I just wanted to say two things. One, I have a request after I share, but I was wondering if Lisa could read today's quote from the
God calling.
God calling. But what I would like to share was so many of you in the St. Pete group I'm close to, and in heart. And in terms of Tom, I never went to the meeting in St. Petersburg, but Tom would come to the center. And I just have an image that just comes to mind where we had a chat. I can't remember exactly what it was about, but it was all about his feeling, about his sweetness and just his disposition was and so I just can feel that connection. But the thing that as I was thinking about, made a connection because I had moved to Myrtle Beach in '62 before I knew I was a Baba lover, and we lived next to the center. And I was going to school at Florida Presbyterian College that fall in '62, and I would take the bus down to St. Petersburg. And at that time, it was a temporary campus at the Maritime. They call it the Maritime. It was down where the St. Louis Cardinal used to have um,
Summer camp.
their spring training. But anyway, we were in these temporary barracks there. And that fall was the Cuban Missile Crisis. So all of the military and naval things were all around there. And so I spent 2 years there going to school and in that area. And then Summer Turner later, she went to and then it became Eckerd College. But anyway, and I was thinking, wasn't Bob, how it is with names, bro. All of a
Are you
sudden.
thinking of Bob Dearborn?
Yeah, he collected.
Yes, he was.
Yes,
He was
yeah.
part of our.
Yeah, and it was a big boost in his life because
For
he was
him,
gone.
oh
Yeah.
my God.
So it's a special place. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. Because that was key in that. I mean, that was a connection. Well, I just felt a connection in terms of the East-West gathering and what's going on there. Yeah. So, Lisa, could you read today's?
All right.
Lisa,
Lisa, will you please read today's?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. Is there anybody else that wants to share?
Rita,
John?
Mariah, anybody?
Hey, what a wonderful group you guys.
John had his hand up.
I have a quick show and tell, which is something that's very special for me, having to do with Tom. So here it is. It's a cup and saucer. It's a cup and saucer from Italy, which one day, and this is just, the way Tom was, periodically something wonderful would come in the mail completely unexpectedly. So here came a box from Dr. Tom Decker in Clearwater, Florida. I'm going to say this was probably 30 years ago. And this came and I opened it up and I thought, what a beautiful cup and saucer. And I called him to thank him and he said, oh, I thought you'd like that. And the nice thing about it is that I don't generally drink coffee, but I do have my tea every morning with this cup and saucer. And so there's a certain way in which for years now I've been sharing my morning tea with Tom, which I so often love to do in person, sitting at his kitchen table generally. So there was just such sweetness in the way he would do things like that. I remember him coming once to visit when I was first getting to know him, and I was living in Tampa, and he showed up with 2 grocery bags full of all of these wonderful foods that he just thought I would like. And, he just was that way, as most of you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Lisa?
Okay. Today is June 8th, which I've noted actually is a month right after Tom's birthday on May 8th. I just realized that. Today's reading is The Only Way. Down through the ages, my power alone has kept millions of souls brave and true and strong who else would have fallen by the way. The faith has been kept alive and handed down, not by the dwellers in ease, but by those who struggled and suffered and died for me. This life is not for the body, it is for the soul. And man too often chooses the way of life that best suits the body, not the way that best suits the soul. And I permit only what best suits the soul. Accept this, and a wonderful molding is the result. Reject it, and my purpose is frustrated, your best prayer unanswered, progress, spiritual progress, delayed, trouble and grief stored up. Try, each of you, to picture your soul as a third being trained by us, by you and me, and then you will share and rejoice in sharing in the discipline and training. Stand apart from your soul with me and welcome training. Rejoice at progress. Jai Baba.
Wow.
Good one.
That couldn't have been more perfect. I mean, that just, if you were thinking of Tom as Lisa was reading that, it could have been more perfect. I was. And I think that Tom really did hold the space for Baba, and that Baba really did come through him, and that he knew that that was the most important thing, and that I believe that when I think of somebody that's passed, that they're there now, and I wanted to believe that Tom was here now. And then when Lisa read that, it was so much about being in spirit, which is eternal, and there is no past, present, and future in spirit. It's all in the eternal now. And I just have to believe that he's here right now. And that message was coming through from him and Baba and all of us. And I just think that this group, I totally agree, is a very, very special group because we get to that place. Yeah. And Rosalie said something the other day about how each one of us has a unique part to play. Each one of us is authentic in that, in a way that no one else can be. And I think that that is what Baba is trying to get us to see in this time. And it's sometimes it's a hard thing to see, but we know that Baba said that the interaction that we have with each other is part of our growth. And so things that some people take on may not be things that other people take on, but hopefully more and more people will see how true this authenticity of this interaction is, and how it brings growth, and how it brings people close to their all that we can't even put into words, but we can feel.
Yeah, Baba.
Chin chin. Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
And Charlie, as you said, chin chin.
Yeah, Tom
that
would say chin chin.
Well, he said it.
Yeah.
I guess he said it through you. But that's the thing, Charlie, that I don't know how many people know this about you, but there is something very authentic about you. And I tip my hat to you regarding that. I'm sure that your brother is acknowledging it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Betty, for hosting
Yes,
this.
thank you, Betty. And
wonderful job.
Participants, the gallery. Jai Baba.
Everybody for showing up.
Betty, I wanted to say one thing. We had our privilege up here in Myrtle Beach to have Ralph and Stella. That your group is very down home. You feel at home I did entirely when I came to your group. And Ralph and Stella were like this couple in time that you didn't have to announce yourself 2 days in advance to visit them. You could drop by. I mean, that's like of the wonderful past when you could just drop in on someone. And boy, that precious couple was part of your group. It had to be a root part there. because that saying in Spanish, mi casa es su casa, my house is your house. Your group did have that. No doubt about it. Has it? Has it? Jai Baba.
Hey, Bob.
Yes.
I wonder if we could say Baba 3 times, huh? Avatar.
Meher Baba ki jai.
Avatar.
Meher Baba ki jai.
Avatar.
Meher Baba ki jai.
Thank you all. What love.
You.
Thanks again, Betty.
Thank you, Betty. Thank
Hey,
you.
Baba Tom.
Hey, Baba
Bob,
Tom.
everybody.
Happy
Great
Thank
job.
Baba
So
Tom.
thank you. It is beautiful.
Meanwhile,
All right. Well,
hey, Baba.
go in love, Tom.
Thank you.